I never thought a simple Amazon delivery would change everything. It was just another Tuesday afternoon when the driver accidentally delivered my package to Karen's house 3 doors down. Most people would just walk it over and leave it on the porch. But Karen isn't most people. Karen is our HOA president, and she has this uncanny ability to turn any interaction into an opportunity for control. When she knocked on my door that evening, she was holding my package like it was evidence in a criminal investigation. Karen speaking. "Oh, hi there, neighbor. I couldn't help but notice this was delivered to my house by mistake. Looks like it's from that fancy audio equipment company. You must be quite the audiophile." Narrator continuing. She was fishing already, her eyes scanning past me into my foyer where, admittedly, you could see my home theater set up through the doorway. I thanked her politely and reached for the package, but she pulled it back slightly. Karen speaking. "You know, I've been meaning to talk to you about your landscaping. The HOA guidelines clearly state that decorative rocks must be between 2 and 4 inches in diameter. Some of yours look suspiciously close to 5 inches. Narrator continuing. I assured her I'd measure them immediately, anything to get my package and end this interaction. But before we get too deep into this story, if you're enjoying these tales of HOA karma, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this one ends, and we've got plenty more stories where entitled neighbors get exactly what they deserve. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. The next morning, I found a violation notice on my door. Not about the rocks, surprisingly, but about my trash cans being visible from the street for quote excessive periods unquote. The thing is, I work from home as a software consultant, and I always bring my cans in within an hour of pickup. But Karen had apparently been documenting with photos, claiming they were out for 2 hours and 13 minutes last week. That weekend, everything changed. I was washing my new Mercedes S-Class in the driveway when Karen practically materialized beside me. Her entire demeanor had shifted. Karen speaking. "Oh my goodness, is this the new model? I've always admired these cars. You know, I was just telling my book club that we need more professional, successful people getting involved in the HOA. Someone with real business experience." Narrator continuing. The violation notices suddenly stopped. In fact, Karen started leaving little gifts on my porch. Homemade cookies, a bottle of wine, even a gift card to the local country club. Then came the dinner invitation. Karen insisted I join her and her husband for what she called a casual get-together with a few neighbors. I should have known better, but I thought maybe she was genuinely trying to be neighborly. When I arrived, I realized I was the only guest. The dining room was set like a 5-star restaurant, complete with multiple fork arrangements that even I wasn't sure how to navigate properly. Throughout dinner, Karen peppered me with increasingly personal questions. Karen speaking. So what exactly does a software consultant do? You must work with some impressive clients. Oh, you can't discuss them? How mysterious. I bet the compensation for that kind of discretion must be substantial. Narrator continuing. Her husband looked uncomfortable, pushing food around his plate while Karen conducted her financial interrogation. The next day, she showed up at my door with a business proposal. She wanted me to invest $50,000 in her new lifestyle coaching business. Karen speaking. With your business acumen and my natural leadership abilities, we could make millions. I've already got the whole neighborhood as potential clients. Narrator continuing. When I politely declined, her face went through several expressions before settling on barely contained rage. That's when the real harassment began. Daily violation notices for everything from the angle of my porch light to the shade of white I'd used to paint my mailbox post. She measured the height of my grass with an actual ruler, claiming it was 1/8 of an inch over the maximum allowed height. She filed complaints about business visitors, even though I rarely had clients come to my home. She even tried to pass a new HOA rule that would limit the number of luxury vehicles per household, specifically targeting properties with more than 2 cars valued over $70,000 each. I tried reasoning with her. I offered to help with legitimate HOA improvements, even volunteered to fund new playground equipment for the community park. But Karen wanted one thing, my money, and she was going to make my life miserable until she got it. She started telling neighbors I was running an illegal business from my home, that my clients were disturbing the peace, that I was probably involved in something shady because nobody makes that much money honestly. The situation escalated when she convinced the HOA board to vote on a special assessment, claiming we needed funds for emergency infrastructure repairs. The assessment was structured progressively based on property values, and coincidentally, my larger lot would owe nearly $40,000 while most others would pay less than $2,000. She actually smirked when she hand-delivered the notice, saying, "Karen speaking, I'm sure this is pocket change for someone like you. Unless, of course, you've been exaggerating your success." Narrator continuing. That's when I decided to play the long game. See, what Karen didn't know was that before becoming a consultant, I'd spent 10 years in corporate law specializing in property disputes and HOA litigation. I also had connections from my previous career that were about to become very useful. I hired a private investigator, completely legal of course, to look into Karen's background. What he found was interesting. Karen had done this before in her previous neighborhood, targeting wealthy residents with harassment until they either paid her off or moved. She'd been quietly forced to resign from her last HOA position, though the details were sealed in a settlement agreement. I started documenting everything meticulously. Every interaction, every violation notice, every passive-aggressive comment. I installed security cameras that happened to capture her taking photos of my property at odd hours, sometimes as early as 5 a.m. I also discovered something fascinating in the HOA bylaws that Karen apparently hadn't read carefully. There was a provision about fiduciary responsibility that specifically prohibited board members from proposing assessments that disproportionately benefited or targeted individual homeowners without documented cause. But the real opportunity came when I learned that the house next to Karen's was about to go on the market. The elderly owner was moving to assisted living, and his son mentioned it to me during a casual conversation. I made an offer immediately, cash, 20% above asking price, with one condition, a quick, quiet sale before it hit the market. Within 2 weeks, I owned the property directly adjacent to Karen's home. Now, this is where it gets beautiful. The property included an easement that Karen had been using for the past 15 years to access her backyard pool equipment. She never formalized the arrangement because the previous elderly owner didn't care. But I cared. I immediately filed the proper paperwork to terminate the informal easement, giving her the legally required 30-day notice. Without that access, she would need to tear down part of her fence and possibly her deck to create a new entrance for pool maintenance, easily a $30,000 project. But I wasn't done. Remember those progressive assessments she'd pushed through? Well, I now own 2 properties in the HOA, which meant I had 2 votes. I recruited 3 other homeowners who were tired of Karen's reign of terror, and we called for a special board election. Karen tried to block it, but we had followed every bylaw to the letter. I even hired my old law firm to ensure every document was perfect. While she was scrambling to maintain control, I played my final card. I converted my second property into a rental and leased it to my cousin, a music producer who works completely legal hours but happens to need to test sound equipment regularly. Every decibel within city ordinances, every hour within legal limits, but absolutely maddening for someone used to absolute quiet. The best part? The HOA rules that Karen herself had written allowed home businesses as long as they didn't violate city noise ordinances. The special election was scheduled for next month, but I had one more surprise. Using the documentation I'd gathered, I filed a formal complaint with the state HOA Oversight Board about Karen's discriminatory enforcement and potential embezzlement of HOA funds through targeted assessments. The investigation would take months, during which Karen would be suspended from her position pending the outcome. I'll never forget the look on her face when the state investigator showed up at the HOA meeting to serve her with the notice. She stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish, as the investigator read out the allegations. Her eyes found mine across the room, and in that moment she understood everything. The easement, the rental property, The election, the investigation, it had all been orchestrated perfectly. Every move completely legal, every document properly filed, every regulation followed to the letter. Karen speaking, stuttering, you planned all of this? But I was just trying to, the neighborhood standards. Narrator continuing, she couldn't even finish her sentence. The realization hit her like a freight train. She had spent months trying to extract money from me through petty harassment and abuse of her HOA position, and instead, she had lost her access easement, would soon lose her board position, was under state investigation, and would have to live next to my cousin's daily sound checks for the foreseeable future. The color drained from her face as she sank into her chair, finally understanding that she had picked the wrong target. Well, that's where our story ends today. If you enjoyed watching Karen's schemes completely backfire, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more stories of entitled neighbors meeting their match. We upload new karma stories every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when Karens mess with the wrong people. Hit the notification bell and leave a comment about your own HOA horror stories. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply knowing the law better than your enemies.